Welcome into another edition of the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. It is Thursday, September 8th. Another big weekend of college football is upon us. For all the latest on college football recruiting, make sure you stay locked into 247sports.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, like this video and please subscribe to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel. We're going to preview perhaps the biggest game of the week. That would be Alabama at Texas from a recruiting angle. And to do so, we've got Mike Roach here joining us. He is the recruiting editor at Horns 247, the Longhorns website on the 24/7 Sports Network. And Mike, I hope you have stocked up on the tacos heading into this week, because we're going to need the energy to track down some of these visitors.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun one. It should be a big weekend on the 40 acres. I think in my time covering Texas, only the Notre Dame game in 2016 and the LSU game in 2019 have produced, kind of the hype like this game will. And this is number one coming in. So always a little different when you have that. And so we're putting a big visitor list together over at Horns 24/7 and adding more names by the day.
I don't think it's a huge official visitor list, and we're going to get into some of the names expected to make it down to Austin for this game. It's an early kickoff, so I think maybe that had a role in it. Obviously, it's an early kick. 11 o'clock, is it, Mike, local time?
Yeah, 11 a.m. It'll be bright and early for you at 9 a.m.
So when you Exactly. So when you think about the logistics, right, of recruits making it down to Texas, catching flights, they all have their own high school game to play on Friday night. That doesn't give you a lot of time to make it down there. So, I think had this been a 4 o'clock kick or a 7 o'clock kick, we're talking about a different type of official visitor list, expecting a lot of recruits to still make it down to Austin, but it does lose a little bit of its luster. Now, before we do get into some of those names, I wanted to discuss this idea of perception, right? Like, I think recruits in general are probably not going down there expecting Texas to win this game. I think they just want to see Texas put up a fight, and I think they want Texas to show that they are taking positive steps in their own trajectory, right? Like in their own development, in the way that this program is building. Just show enough there, and I think it's a win for Texas from a recruiting angle. Of course, Steve Sarkisian, Bijan Robinson, Quinn Ewers, all those guys are going to say they want to win this game. But I think if you show enough, and if you're Texas and you're allowing yourself to give these recruits some hope about the future in the SEC, all you have to do is have a competitive matchup.
Absolutely. I think that the expectations are somewhat low nationally. I would say very low nationally. Nobody's expecting Texas to win this game. So they're in a spot where if they can, just compete at a higher level than I think people think they are capable of, then they've already notched some sort of perception win, as you would say. And then, I mean, if the unthinkable happens and they do end up pulling off a win, then you're kind of playing on house money at that point. You've cashed in on a big recruiting weekend. I think that what we saw last year with Texas A&M beating number one Alabama at home and then launching that into the top-rated class in the country, something like that could happen. But I do think recruits right now just kind of want to see how this program stacks up with the nationally elite, especially with Texas moving on to the SEC in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a program that's been making noise. Number 2 in the composite team recruiting rankings nationally heading into this matchup for the 2023 recruiting class. There are 3 official visitors that we know of midweek heading into this weekend. The number 1 player at the tight end position, Deuce Robinson's expected to be there. Tausili Akana, the number 1 edge rusher from the state of Utah, is supposed to be there. And Texas will also be hosting Jalen Hale, receiver, 4-star prospect, top 100 player in the composite, an in-state player there from Longview in the state of Texas. Let's start with Deuce Robinson. Mike, this is a player who his interest in the Longhorns is a bit more delayed. I think it's been maybe a newer thing in his recruitment. For the longest time, it's been essentially a USC, Georgia, Alabama battle. He took multiple unofficial visits to each of those schools already in this process. He's a big baseball player who participated in the Perfect Game scouting combine. He's also at the Under Armour game, the area code game. So this is a player who spent a lot of his offseason in the summer playing baseball. But he did get a chance to mix in some unofficial visits on the football side of things. Now, the big angle working here for Texas is his friendship with Arch Manning, the highly coveted, highly touted #1 player in the 2023 class. They were able to meet actually on an unofficial visit together to Clemson last year. They struck a relationship. They've been maintaining contact, and that's been a big driving force in his interest with the Longhorns. What do you expect Texas's angle to be for Deuce Robinson to be able to get in the picture here and really make a push for a player that right now is trending towards USC on the 24/7 Sports crystal ball?
Well, I think first off, you mentioned his baseball side, and Texas has a nationally elite baseball program, probably the most decorated in NCAA history. They've got more trips to Omaha than just about anybody. So I do think that'll be a big factor that they will pitch him. But if you watch last week's game against Louisiana Monroe, Steve Sarkisian utilized Jatavian Sanders at tight end quite a bit. I think he had 85 yards and a touchdown. And I think that's what they're looking to showcase is how they can put a vertical tight end like Deuce Robinson who can stretch the field in position to succeed, and they've got openings at that position to come in and play almost immediately. That's going to be their big hope, and they're going to have to put it on display against a team that, like you said, he is considering in Alabama, and that's always kind of a catch-22 to me because you have a chance to put up a good presentation, but you also have a chance for that other team that you're battling against to put up something good as well. So I think they're doing the best with what they have. Robinson actually has visited Austin before. I remember, running into him on campus last summer at their elite camp and just looking at him getting out of the cart and thinking, who is that? And he definitely catches your eye right away. But I think that the big hope is just display what they have at the tight end position and what they can do with it, mix that baseball element in there and see kind of what comes out of the weekend.
Yeah, 6'6", 225. We've likened him to a high school version of Aaron Judge at the tight end position. #1, like I mentioned, at his position in this 2023 class, a player who already took his official visit to USC. So the Trojans are hoping to maintain that pole position in his recruitment. He does plan to take officials to Alabama and Georgia during the season, but I'm not anticipating a decision at any point during the season. This sounds like it's going to go towards that early signing period, potentially even at whichever All-American game he plays at. He could be announcing his decision on national TV. That's that type of recruitment. So it gives Texas, I think, a lot of runway here. I think this is an opportunity for them to stamp their name firmly in the battle because they did emerge a little later. And I think that interest has risen since Arch Manning joined the recruiting class. I think that's been a big catalyst here. Now it's Steve Sarkisian's chance to make this push to really solidify the Longhorns in his recruitment. And it still gives them a few more months to really make a push and to really make it seem like Austin will be the place for him. And obviously baseball is also one of those factors that he's considering. Let's move on to the next prospect, Tausili Akana, the #1 edge rusher in the West region out of Skyridge High School in the state of Utah, originally from the state of Hawaii, and has a relationship with Longhorns commit Leona Lefau out of Kahuku. They were actually supposed to play together in Kahuku, if not for the pandemic. Both of them spent their sophomore seasons on the mainland playing high school football when it was canceled on the islands. Leona Lefau went back to Hawaii to play at Kahuku, and Tausili kind of stayed on the mainland to play. Now he's in Utah, and so this will give, I think, Texas an opportunity to potentially pair both of them together. And there's an interesting angle because his sister actually already transferred to Texas from Nebraska, where she was playing volleyball.
Yeah, and she's been a smash hit on the volleyball team, from what I understand.
Oh, that's a nice pun. I like it.
One of their best players. I don't know much about volleyball, but I see her name come up a lot. Texas has a definite need at edge in this class. They need pass rushers, and there are a few better in the country than Tausili Akana. He's been to Texas, I believe, twice. He was there last summer and then came once again this summer on that big barnstorming tour him and his dad made across the country. I think Texas has done a good job of keeping themselves in a position to make a move. And is this weekend the weekend that they can make a move? I think that the family angle does play big with his sister there. From what I understand, the two are very close and wouldn't mind the idea of going to college together. And then, like I said, an immediate need at edge rusher for Texas. I think that they had a relationship with Jake Longy, who was previously on staff and has left the staff to go outside of the business and do something else. So I do think that may hurt them a little bit. But Pete Kwiatkowski and Jeff Choate are very experienced in recruiting out west and recruiting in that area from their time at Washington and Boise State. Steve Sarkisian is a BYU legend and has that reputation, I think, as well within that state. So I do think that they know kind of what they're dealing with here and how to recruit a player like Tausili. It's just going to come down to, I think, how this weekend goes and if he can see himself there. Blair, I'd ask you, who are they really, competing against at this point?
I think Oklahoma's up there. He's supposed to take an official visit there later this season. LSU has made a strong push for him as well. Out west, the only program that I see having a chance to make a dent in this recruitment would be Oregon, and you can never count them out. They already have 8 top 24/7 prospects committed in this class, and when you think about Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoi and Tony Tuioti, all the guys that are on that staff on the defensive side of the ball, you never count out the Ducks for any player from the West Coast, especially with the way they're recruiting right now. I know he wants to get back to Tennessee for an official there. It sounds like Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback that's committed there, has been making a strong push to recruit him. And so this has been a really interesting battle because he did take those 8 trips right on 8 consecutive days in the summer. He wrapped it up with a trip to Texas on that final day, and you would have thought, okay, by the 8th day, this kid's probably really tired. He doesn't really want to be on this campus, doesn't want to be on this visit. But Texas was one of the highlights of that eight school trip during that week-long tour of the South. So it's going to be interesting to see how much ground I think Texas is able to make up here in this battle, because this is the chance for them to set a standard and to set an impression in terms of the official visits. Yeah, it might be the first one that he takes during the season, but this is going to be a benchmark now that he's going to be able to measure Texas with. And what's interesting, Mike, is that he has a high school game on Friday night. He will head straight to the airport, and he has a red eye out of Salt Lake City that will take him to Atlanta, and then he'll fly from Atlanta to Austin. That's the only way he'll be able to make it to that 11 a.m. kickoff. It sounds like he'll be in Austin a couple hours before the ball starts to fly there. I think that's maybe the biggest hurdle for Texas here is how tired could this kid be on his official visit, since that direct flight from Austin or from Salt Lake City to Austin would put him, that first one would put him there by halftime. So that would be the biggest hurdle that I look at with this. And I think that's maybe the biggest negative about this game is the kickoff time.
Yeah, it sounds like the staff will need to stock up on Red Bulls for the recruiting lounge for those guys. I remember last year, Ernest Green from Bosco coming in for his official visit for an 11 a.m. kick, and watching the big man. He took the red eye, watching the big man in the stands try to keep his eyes open and all those sorts of things. It is a big hurdle for him. I know the staff likes 11 a.m. kicks for recruiting visits because it allows them to spend most of the day rather than guys getting in early and then not getting to spend any one-on-one time with them while they're preparing for the game all day. But when you are recruiting these West Coast guys, that is always a big factor.
We are back on the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast. Blair Angulo with Mike Roach, the recruiting editor at Horns 24/7, the Texas site on the 24/7 Sports Network. Mike, we saw LeBron James last week make his trip out to Ohio State. That was the big profile recruiting matchup, Notre Dame, Ohio State. We've got Alabama, Texas. Who are you expecting on the sidelines, and who are recruits going to want to be taking photos with?
That's a good question. Texas has its own set of luminaries that shows up for this game. Of course, Matthew McConaughey will probably be making his way around the field, and he's always a big hit with the recruits' mothers when he's there. The Undertaker will show up from time to time. He lives in the area.
Okay.
He's been.
What's his real name? Does he have a real name?
Mark Calloway. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think people go up to me like, "Hey, Mark, can I get a photo?" Or do they go, "Hey, Taker,
I think
can you roll your eyes back and let's take this shot real quick?"
I think just for respect's sake, it's Taker. He's been there a couple times. I think you could see some former players, Vince Young, guys like that, certainly make their way down there. So it should be a pretty crowded sideline. And, Austin usually turns out for a big game like this.
When you think about the game and the ability for Texas to make an impression on recruits, where would you put Jalen Hale in that mix for them to be able to, gain some ground here and really make an impression on this prospect from within the state's borders?
It's a really odd recruitment because it's run really hot and cold for Texas. Jalen Hale is a kind of freakishly athletic, tall, long wide receiver from East Texas out of the Powerhouse program from Longview. He's been a starter since his freshman year out there, which is a tough thing to do. At times it seems he's been really high on Texas and times really low. Right now, they're kind of on the upswing with him, but he is just coming off of an official visit from Alabama. He's got an official visit to Texas A&M next week, I believe, where his one of his best friends is Haynes King is the starting quarterback for the Aggies. So Texas is in a spot here where they really need to make him come out of this weekend, believing in what they can do. Now Hale, I think, is really high on the prospects of playing with Arch Manning, and I think that would be, something in their favor. And the way Texas can throw the ball and move the ball is something that he likes. But he's also, I think, big into NIL. I think that's going to be a big part of the pitch and those sorts of things. So we'll just kind of see what the buzz is coming out of the weekend. I do think that, Arch Manning will not make it in this weekend. And I do think that might hurt Texas a little bit with some of these guys. Not hurt, but, it would certainly help if Manning was there kind of rallying the troops. So, I do think Hale has a good relationship with Brennan Marion, the wide receivers coach at Texas, who is able to relate to kids on many different levels because of his story and his background that's so interesting. But we'll see. We'll see if Texas is enough to overcome kind of what Alabama did last week.
Who would have the longer line waiting for photos, The Undertaker or Arch Manning?
I guess it would depend on the demographic, right? Like, I think guys like you and I would probably be waiting for The Undertaker.
Mark Calloway, I guess is his name. Or was he known? He was also known as the American Badass for a while, right?
Yeah.
Am I aging myself here?
That was kind of past my wrestling watching experience, but I do think that's accurate.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a huge contingent of recruits there. Before we go, Mike, the atmosphere, I think, is going to be the interesting thing, right? Like how are Texas fans going to be able to build up and add to the atmosphere for an 11 a.m. kickoff? And there's going to be a lot of younger prospects that, could potentially be looking at this as a preview for what Texas could accomplish in the SEC once it eventually makes that move in conferences. Who are some of the big names that you're expecting to be there in the underclassmen group?
Well, I think first off, when you talk about atmosphere, you've got to cross your fingers in Texas on the weather. An 11 a.m. kick in September could mean 110 degrees. Or, if we keep getting the rain we've been getting, it might cool off enough to be a very pleasant day. There are some big names coming. Unofficially in 2023, Marcus Deal, a big defensive line target for them out of Naaman Forest in the Garland area in Dallas. Mikael Harrison Pilot from right up the road in Temple, a multifaceted athlete who could play receiver or defensive back. Those guys will be there. And then in the 24 class, they've got guys like Micah Hudson, who's probably the top receiver in the state of Texas. Colin Simmons from Duncanville, one of the top edge rushers in the country. You've got Zeno Umeozulu, one of the other top edge rushers in the country, whose brother Nato committed to Texas last year and signed with them and should see some playing time. And then Peyton Pierce, who's their top target at linebacker in the state of Texas from Lovejoy out in the Lucas area. So a lot of big names in that 24. And I think that more so than not more so, but as much as you'd like to build in that 23 class, you want to start providing foundations for 24 and 25. And
Yeah, I mean, considering there's already 22 commitments, right, in this 2023 recruiting class, already up to 2 nationally in the rankings. Not a lot of room, right? You're saving some spots for the Tausilia Kanas and the Deuce Robinsons and the Jalen Hale, the players that we already mentioned that will be there on officials. But like you mentioned, right, to your point, this is as big for those 24s, those 25s, as it is for those finishing touches in this current cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you also need to save a couple of spots for the transfer portal in this day and age. So they are just about buttoned up in 23. And I think that they have a chance with the guys I mentioned. Draylen Miller, one of the top, two-way players in the country out of Silsbee in Southeast Texas. A couple of offensive linemen coming in. This is an opportunity to really cement things with them, because I think the 23 guys are pretty much, their minds are not made up, but they're pretty far into their process to where I don't know if one result will change things one way or another, where this weekend could be a big time, momentum shift for those underclassmen.
Yeah, like I mentioned, the result, I don't know if anyone's expecting Texas to upset Alabama. I think everyone's hoping for a competitive game, a really cool atmosphere, and obviously that would really, I think, allow Texas to, like you said, build some momentum heading into the future classes. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. You are the original American Badass.
I appreciate that, Blair. Coming from you means quite a lot.
All right, that is Mike Roach, the recruiting editor at Horns 24/7, the Texas site in the 24/7 Sports Network. I am Blair Angulo for our producer, Lance Glynn. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the 24/7 Sports Football Recruiting Podcast.